One of the most pressing issues facing the government is raising the country's standard of living, including cutting poverty rates. One of China's poorest counties is Hebei Province, which was one of the areas that the government is paying special attention to. Han Bin visited the village to see what's changed.
Just a 3-hour drive south of Beijing is Luotuowan village. In this remote mountainous area, Luotuowan is gripped by isolation and poverty. Yet it seems that life for Tang Zongxiu is getting better. Her family is among the poorest in the village. She says the change started some 2 months ago after China's new leader, Xi Jinping, arrived at her home. Xi Jinping asked local authorities to pay special attention to the hardships the farmers face daily. Each family then received some money.
Xi Jinping gave me a sack of flour, a bottle of cooking oil, a quilt, and a quilted coat. I was so happy to get these gifts.
Help from the government and society has been pouring in. Villagers are convinced it was triggered by Xi Jinping's visit. Village head Gu Runjin told us they are planning to build Luotuowan into an eco-tourist destination.
The mountain, water, plants, medicinal herbs, these are the exclusive resources we have. Xi Jinping helped promote the village to the outside.
Luotuowan is rich in natural resources, but the village is in danger of disappearing because of poverty. Across the country, there are more than 100 million impoverished people in rural areas. China aims to have a moderately prosperous society by 2020. The most arduous task in the next 7 years is in the rural areas. Gu Runjin has his own vision for change in Luotuowan. He believes that with confidence gained from the central government, his villagers can transform the wasteland into a gold mine. Luotuowan is one of hundreds of poor villages in China, but the rest are all unknown to the outside. Luotuowan's sudden fame has brought with it great benefits, but the great majority of China's struggling rural areas are waiting for a more effective means to get rid of poverty. The government needs to do a lot more to meet that challenges. Han Bin, CCTV, China's Hebei Province.
Joining us to talk more about income disparity in the Chinese consumer in China is Helen Wang. She is the author of The Chinese Dream, The Rise of the World's Largest Middle Class and What It Means to You. She joins us live from Mountain View, California. And Helen, welcome to the show. Good to see you. There's a lot of questions here. I'm going to get right off to it here. Where are the Chinese consumers and how have they changed over the past decade?
Well, Chinese middle class, they are concentrated in urban areas. And as we know, about 20 years ago, there was no middle class in China because the economic growth, and they emerged quite rapidly over last 2 or 3 decades. Now the Chinese middle class is about 450 million. And they are, compared with China's total population, they're probably only 35%, but it's quite a sizable middle class. But they are mostly concentrated in urban areas.
Around the world, we talk about consumers, whether it's the working class or the middle class or the upper middle class, we associate a dollar figure on a lot of these individuals. In China in particular, what have you noticed in terms of the trends? Obviously, the middle class, a lot of companies want to sell stuff to them, but also there's the working class. Has the working class benefited over the last decade of growth to make them into consumers as well?
Well, I think it depends how you define the Chinese middle class. In my research, I define the Chinese middle class as those families, their annual income between 10,000 to 60,000 US dollars. And, but again, the number could be misleading and because the cost of living in China is very different in big cities and in smaller cities. So a rule of thumb is a family, a household with about a third of income for discretionary spending. So those families could qualify as a middle class. And I think in larger cities, certainly there are a lot of higher middle class families. Their income increase much faster than family in smaller cities or in more remote areas.
Helen, I want to ask about the title of your book, The Rise of the World's Largest Middle Class, and what it means to you. And I guess another way to rephrase that is, what does it mean to businesses? Give us some examples of businesses that have done a good job in targeting the Chinese middle class. And of course, the other side of that question is, which companies have flat out failed?
Well, of course, certainly the Chinese middle class create tremendous opportunities for companies in, let's say, consumer sectors. Some companies are already doing very well. We know Starbucks, for example, they are planning to open more than 1,500 locations in next 2 years, and Yum brand are doing very well. Nike's revenue increased tremendously, and same for the auto industries. So those companies are benefited from the Chinese middle class. The whole equation dynamics of a business has changed. Not just Chinese export goods to the world, but now Chinese are importing and from the rest of the world.
Helen, what's the biggest mistake you've seen companies make when they target Chinese consumers?
Yes, as I said, a lot of companies are successful in China, but some companies are struggling, and some have failed. One of the biggest mistakes they make is, I think, is they don't quite understand the Chinese consumers or condition of the Chinese market, because the way of doing business in China is very different from that of in the West. And Chinese consumers, their tastes and their preferences are very different as well. So for companies, for example, we know Home Depot is struggling, and Mattel practically failed. Even Burger King is struggling. So a lot of companies still have a lot of challenges in China, and they really need to find the right people who understand the China market and adapt their business to the Chinese market.
Helen Wong joining us, author joining us from California. Thank you very much. Good thing these companies aren't targeting my parents, because they will just not want to spend any money.